super friends, I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson. Now, a couple days ago, actress Evangeline Lilly revealed on her Twitter what Hope's new costume is going to look like in the Antman and the Wasp movie. And I have a real soft spot in my heart for both Hope and Janet. I don't know if you know that about me, so I really wanted to talk about it because personally, I think this costume looks a little more like an X-Men costume circa 2000 or even a Batman costume circa 1989 than it looks of a piece with the Marvel Cinematic Universe after we've seen characters like Captain America running around. It's all black and there's almost no color, and this has stirred up a bit of controversy because at the end of the first Ant-Man movie, we saw such an amazing Wasp costume that belonged to Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp in both the comics and the movie continuities. Now, the Ant-Man 2 suit is definitely inspired by Elsa Charretier's design of Nadia Pym's costume from the current Unstoppable Wasp series being published by Marvel Comics, except it has even less red and not as many cool highlights that reflect back on the insectoid name that the character has. Marvel Studios nailed the design of the Wasp the first time around, and I really think that this version of the costume feels like a step backward. Now, like I said, Hope and Janet have a huge soft spot in my heart, so here I want to share with you 5 Wasp costumes that are better than the Ant-Man 2 suit that I think would really work on screen. The original Wasp costume, which debuted in Avengers #1 in September of 1963. This is the classic first costume we ever saw Janet Van Dyne in. And you know what? As the only female Avenger at the time, she named them wearing this costume. Now, I don't really know what red has to do with a wasp necessarily, but I think this is a beautiful, highly feminine design that is both retro and fashion forward in a way that I think would work great for Ant-Man and the Wasp, building off of the Ant-Man mythology of this is a heist movie that kind of feels like it's derivative of the 60s and 70s films that we're used to seeing. The helmet might be a bit silly, it might be a bit much and needs some retooling, but I think the stinger at the top of it is really cool, and I think this is a way to have a more casual, maybe more like a dress look. Now, Janet has been a fashion designer in the past, and this might be a cool trait to pass over into her daughter Hope as she appears here in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Number 4, the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes suit that debuted in September of 2010. Here she's actually the color of a wasp. She's yellow and black. It's so great. This design builds off the same kind of thing that I was talking about with the original Wasp costume. It is highly feminine without being super revealing. And again, we have some throwbacks to the idea of being a fashion designer. I think the dress here is very sweet, although maybe not wholly practical, and you might need some tapering in if you wanted to take inspiration from this for the cinematic universe. I also really have a soft spot for the 2 antennae that we see her running around with. There's a way to make them both functional and an amazing design element. And if she's working with Hank Pym and Scott Lang, who are supposed to be these incredible inventors, even if they wind up pairing up with some other Avengers like Bruce Banner or Tony Stark, depending on where those characters are in continuity at the time, it would make sense to have either like radar antennas or Bluetooth or radio or anything kind of pseudo techno babble that you want. Plus, this costume looks like the Bumblebee costume from the original Teen Titans series, which I also have a huge soft spot for, so I had to include it on my list. Number 3, the Ultimate Comics Wasp costume designed by Brian Hitch. Now, this really embraces the anthropomorphic wasp motif due to the fact that this version of Janet Van Dyne is a mutant who's a lot more like a bug than we are used to seeing. Here, those wings are actually real, kids. They are not a prosthetic or a costume piece added on to the character. Plus, later versions of this costume would go on to add what is my favorite mask/headpiece that Wasp has ever had. And if in the Marvel Cinematic Universe we want to preserve her identity, but we don't want to put the Wasp Stinger helmet on her, this would be a great way to incorporate this later design, I think from Ultimates 3, back into the character. Number 2, Marvel Now Wasp. Now, you may recognize this costume because it came to prominence during the Axis event, which was a big deal over at Marvel Comics. We have a return of the pointy wasp helmet from the original design that I mentioned that I liked so much there, although this version definitely incorporates the yellow of an actual wasp, which is a really great design step forward. I also like this costume a lot because it's a callback to the Yellow Jacket costume. Now, Yellow Jacket has been an identity that Hank Pym has taken up in the past, and both Janet and the cinematic version of Hope have interesting and maybe complicated relationships with Hank Pym, and I think honoring him and honoring his legacy and the fact that he has shepherded it in their superhero identities in this very visual way could be really meaningful and could be an interesting build on any scenes that we're going to have of Hank Pym as Ant-Man or maybe even Yellow Jacket in the past, which we could see in this movie. I also love the goggles. I love a good goggle on a superhero. I'm a 90s kid, so it is very near and dear to my heart. Plus, if you're going to be flying around all the time and you're not Superman and you don't have a bunch of invulnerability going for you, you don't want to get real life wasp in your eyes. That's just gross. I also really love the inclusion of the W insignia over Janet's chest here, recalling her name, the Wasp. This is the kind of iconography that I think can be really well done, really subtle. I think the Wonder Woman costume is a really, really great example of this, and this might be the perfect place to try and incorporate it. Number 1, the Marvel Avengers Alliance costume that first appeared in March of 2012. Now, I know it has appeared in the comics as well, but it came to prominence during the Avengers Alliance game, so that's why I wanted to name it that. This amazing piece of art was painted by J.G. Jones, and I think is the best example of why this costume is absolutely amazing and why it is hands down my favorite. Now, I think some of the past versions of this costume, including the Marvel Now costume and the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, have a more anthropomorphically correct use of the yellow stripes and placement on the body, but I do think these gold embellishments, which if you were going to include the suit in the movie, you could definitely make armor out of any number of Marvel elements that are way stronger than anything that exists in our universe. I'm looking at you, adamantium. It's not going to be adamantium, it would be vibranium. But I do think that these highlights down the front of the Wasp are really, really beautiful and highly feminine. What I like about this costume is it is feminine. It's incredibly sleek. The movement of the lines recall the design on Spider-Man's costume, which is hands down one of the most iconic and best superhero costumes ever made, while highlighting the fact that she is a female superhero while not over-sexualizing her the way a lot of other versions of the Wasp costume. Plus, it made one of the best action figures ever. I mean, look at her. How amazing is this? Look, I can almost see right through her wings at you. I'm so excited, and I love this costume so much that this is the Wasp action figure that I love. So those are my top 5 Wasp costumes that would be better than the Ant-Man 2 suit. We have had so many amazing superhero costumes and female superhero costumes. We're in a post-Supergirl, a post-Wonder Woman world, and I'm really, 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 really hoping that this version of Hope Van Dyne is going to get a truly amazing costume. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Ashley Victoria Robinson, and I hope to see you back right here for some more exclusive geeky content.